Hey, it's Lou, and some wild shit is going down with drone warfare. Drones have become the signature weapon in the United States global war on terror, enabling the military to kill enemies in remote locations without risking an American life. There's no pilot in there, no one who can get shot down. But critics argue that the drone program, the rare Obama policy adopted by Trump, actually exacerbates terrorism. Then there are philosophical concerns. When you have an unmanned machine, a robot really, killing people, even bad people, is that fair? In a lot of ways, drones are ideal killing machines. Compared to the alternatives like traditional air campaigns or special raids, drone strikes are cheap. I'm not just talking about money, I'm also talking about the expense in American lives. Why put soldiers at risk? Why send them on a perilous journey to hunt dangerous terrorists when an unmanned aerial vehicle will do the trick? This rationale has justified the launch of nearly 5,000 drone strikes since 2004, which have killed as many as 10,000 suspected terrorists.
A drone strike in Raqqa, Syria, killed the British-born Mohammed Emwazi.
In addition, Georgetown professor Daniel Byman, who's a senior fellow at the Brookings Institution, told me the surveillance capabilities of drones have disrupted the communication and training regimen of groups like ISIS and Al-Qaeda. That's made it harder for them to plan and launch attacks. And while drones have certainly killed hundreds of civilians, much more on that in a bit, Byman explained that drones can hover over a target, picking the right time to attack. And the bombs dropped by drones, A, can be pretty small, so less collateral damage, and B, have technology features that allow for more precise targeting. But more precise targeting of what? Daphne Aviatar of Amnesty International's Security with Human Rights program told me that US drone policy has failed to make adequate distinctions between terrorists and civilians, and that violates international law. And all of the decision-making is taking place outside of any court system, so these targeted foreigners aren't given due process, no day in court. Instead, CIA officials and other counterterrorism experts create a kill list for presidential approval. These decision makers can be writing a death sentence for someone halfway across the world whose name they might not even know, who's on their radar because of foreign intelligence that is sometimes unreliable. And their criteria is a little suspect. Reports indicate that the US has authorized so-called signature strikes. Signature strikes don't target individuals, but groups engaged in suspicious behavior. According to the New York Times, the joke at the CIA was that 3 guys doing jumping jacks qualifies as suspicious behavior. Those loose standards has allegedly produced tragic results. According to a report out of Stanford's and NYU's law schools, a signature strike that killed as many as 42 people along the Afghanistan-Pakistan border in March 2011 hit a tribal council. Not a group of terrorists, as suspected, but community members resolving some routine dispute. As an aside, faulty, even intentionally misleading intelligence is a major problem in the war against terror. And when you kill an enemy combatant instead of capturing him, you eliminate the possibility he might hand over some valuable info that could stop the next terrorist attack. But I digress. When civilians are killed by drones, there are fears that blowback might occur. That is, the friends, family, even government of the civilian casualty will become so enraged at the US that they will become uncooperative or even radicalized. Retired American General Stanley McChrystal explained, "The resentment created by American use of unmanned strikes is much greater than the average American appreciates. They are hated on a visceral level." So, the thinking goes, drones might kill today's enemies, but the associated collateral damage will create tomorrow's in the process. In Greek mythology, cutting off the head of a hydra resulted in 2 more heads growing. If blowback has a similar effect, 1 death leads to 2 recruits, then you have the potential for a perpetual regenerative war. However, University of Oklahoma professor Akhil Shah recently published a study that examined the concept of blowback and found it to be overstated and anecdotal. After interviewing 167 well-informed people in Pakistan's most drone-targeted region and reviewing police surveys of over 500 terrorists, Shah found that radicalization is a complex process, and drones don't motivate radicals as much as other things like US military presence in Muslim countries or religious concerns or even economic issues like unemployment. Shah's research also suggests that the idea of blowback might rely on stereotypes of Muslim people being vindictive and violent. Still, if blowback is a legitimate concern, there's academic evidence that drones actually reduce civilian deaths. Avery Plaw of UMass Dartmouth estimates that in conventional military conflicts at the turn of the 21st century, civilian deaths range from about 33% to more than 80% of all deaths. By contrast, US drone strikes in Pakistan killed a smaller percentage, between 4 and 20% of an admittedly small sample size. Overall, the Bureau of Investigative Journalism estimates that somewhere between 751 and 1,555 civilians have died in US drone strikes. The problem is, reliable numbers are really hard to come by when it comes to the United States drone program. Government-issued figures are thought to be intentionally misleading. Reports indicate that the US government presumes that all military-aged males in the blast area of a drone strike are automatically enemy combatants. Doesn't matter if the deceased is actually a civilian. Now, the government gets away with the secrecy surrounding the program, not just the numbers, but the decision-making process too, because legislation passed in the wake of 9/11 has allowed the president to wage drone warfare with almost no congressional oversight, let alone public deliberation. And keep in mind, a lot of these drone strikes aren't on declared battlefields. They're in places like Somalia, Yemen, and Pakistan. So many people argue they resemble assassinations more than combat. Assassinations, in theory, are illegal in the US. But drone proponents in the executive branch have made complex and sometimes convoluted legal arguments that get around that prohibition. Saying something is for national security is a bit of a blank check in a post-9/11 world. Now, imagine if you're the president of the United States. These drone strikes don't put any American troops at immediate risk, so no grieving Gold Star mother is going to criticize you. They don't require congressional approval, so no political battles. And because everything is done behind closed doors, you can fudge the numbers if civilians accidentally get killed. And for Obama, who campaigned vociferously against Guantanamo Bay,
as president, I will close Guantanamo.
Killing a suspected terrorist eliminated the thorny question about where you're going to put that terrorist. All these factors make using drones a seductively easy decision. And recent reports indicate the Trump administration has loosened the rules surrounding drone use. And lack of transparency remains a critical problem. So the fear is, do drones make war too easy? Benjamin Friedman, a foreign policy fellow at Defense Priorities, told me that because of the lack of checks on the president, drone wars are undemocratic, and undemocratic wars tend to be dumb wars. Having to give evidence and defend your position generally forces leaders to be more careful and strategic. In a fascinating essay linked below, Friedman compares drone warfare to, quote, one-click shopping online, where low upfront cost and ease of delivery encourage whimsical choices uninhibited by debate about value. In other words, drones are so seductively easy to use, the United States might get into unnecessary conflicts without understanding their long-term cost. It seems like America has already done that in Iraq and Afghanistan. In addition to easy, dumb wars, others think drones foster unfair wars. Grégoire Chamayou, a French philosopher, seems to have this opinion. In his book, A Theory of the Drone, Chamayou cites a prescient 1970s paper about remote war, warfare between machines and human bodies. One side loses people, and the other side loses toys. Chamayou says drones match this concept of a remote war, and says this eliminates the bravery ethos, the sense of sacrifice traditionally associated with a just conflict. He goes as far as calling drone war a coward's war. Byman pushed back on this characterization. War isn't romantic, he told me. It's not two knights charging at each other on horseback. All strategy, all technology is designed to create an advantage for one side. But it's all too easy to abuse an advantage, especially when it's being used in secret. Drones may have made conducting a war easier than ever before, but the moral considerations should remain difficult.
The Jonas brothers are here. They're out there somewhere. Sasha and Malia are huge fans, but boys don't get any ideas. I have two words for you: predator drones.